So how do we get into it?
However you want.
Well,
You don't have to start right this second if you don't want. You just go into it whenever you're ready.
I just don't really know how to open.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Today is going to be a little bit different.
Keep going. Introduce us.
We're going to talk about your YouTube channel that was really successful, but you've abandoned it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That accurately sums it up. You started it. It blew up. It's like everyone's dream. It's like you got lightning in a bottle.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it was.
It's not the biggest. It's not the biggest channel ever, but 327,000 subscribers is pretty decent.
Yeah. I mean, it was successful by my wildest dreams. Yes, it was definitely successful. And yes, I have not uploaded anything to it in the past 2 or 3 years or something. I'm afraid to look, actually.
Last one was 2 years ago.
Okay. So not great.
I'm not afraid to look.
Okay.
But
well,
your first one was 11 years ago.
Yeah. No, I didn't really. The early videos were me just kind of playing music, and those were never super successful. So I really started doing the theory lessons a few years after that, and that's when it started to like really grow and eventually get to where it did.
Yeah. So that. Okay. Well, how did that? Why did you upload that first video?
I think because I wanted to be famous. I think that's the honest answer. Like I remember seeing videos of people playing. I mean, think back to YouTube 11 years ago. It was a different world.
Yeah.
And a lot of what was really popular was simple. Like it wasn't quite as, I don't know, mainstreamified as it is now. But yeah, I remember seeing videos of just random people playing random songs. Sometimes they played them really well. Sometimes they played them not well at all. And they'd have, 2 million views, which at the time was a ton. And I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. And that didn't work.
Well, actually, it did work because you have 2.7 million views on this video.
Well, on an instructional video, right? I don't think anybody, even after the channel was successful, nobody went back and like watched me playing stuff. There was no need for that.
Yeah, no, these are way lower. I think the most views you have on one of the performance videos is like 50,000 or 48,000 or something.
Yeah.
But okay, so you did this how basic chords work. Music theory lesson 1.
Yeah.
And you just put it out there on a whim, just like.
Well, so I was teaching at the time. I can't remember if I had graduated school or not. I guess I must have, maybe just. But I was teaching a lot, and so I was, every day I was teaching full time basically. So I was just thinking about this stuff constantly, and I was, an active participant on YouTube, where I'd watch a lot of stuff, and I felt like there wasn't really any good theory there was some, but not that kind of thing, like the more conceptual music theory lessons. So I was like, I really think I could do a good job like presenting this thing that I have in my head that I teach to my students. And so I literally like taped a camera to my ceiling fan and like rigged up this whole thing so that I could draw on a whiteboard and like show stuff on a piano.
So it wasn't like just a complete whim. I mean, you spent.
No, I mean, I didn't like, but the plan wasn't to be really successful. It was more like, hey, I think I could do something valuable. And that was pretty much the full thought. I hoped it would do well. And at first it didn't. Like almost nothing happened for a year. It's really weird the way YouTube can work, but it like a few people watched it and they're like, oh, this is fine. This kind of helped me. And then like a year later, YouTube just decided that this was the video everyone on YouTube needed to see. And it just like took off from there. And at that point I was like, okay, I want to do more and I want to keep this going. And so I did.
So had you kept making other videos, but before that, like went viral?
I might have done a couple. I think I did like 3 because at the time I was like, I'm going to explain basic chords, which is a really foundational concept, And then I wanted to get into like extended chord, like seventh chords and things like that. Because to me, like that was kind of how I thought about music. Some people are very like scale centric. They always think of scales, but to me, I felt and still do think that like thinking in terms of chords is like a better way to look at it. So I wanted to do a few like that. So I think I did even before it like started to get successful.
So once it got like successful and you're like, oh wow, like there's a lot of people watching this. Were you really excited to do more? Were you like, oh yeah, I can do this. I'll just keep making videos. Like,
Yeah, I think I mean I think I went through a few phases where I was like really active, and then I kind of like viewership didn't really increase for a while, or for whatever reason I just wasn't quite as invested. So there was a few like major spurts of that where I was like, yes, this is awesome, it's growing, I'm gonna keep doing this. One of the problems I had early on was that my first video, the how basic chords work video, for years it was my most successful video, and it's pretty bad. Like I didn't know how to talk and breathe at the same time, and so I'm like constantly just having these huge like inhales, and I can't pace my breathing correctly, and it's so awful to listen to, and people call it out constantly, like they're like, dude, take a breath, and I'm like, I don't know how.
I was reading through some of the comments. I was like, wow, that's harsh, dude.
Yeah, and it's a long video of me just like constantly wheezing for air. It's
well, I mean, knowing you before this, I mean, growing up with you, I don't like think of you as like this super outgoing,
right.
social person.
I wasn't. Still,
right.
I'm not. Yeah, well, it was definitely. I felt comfortable teaching in person, and not at first. I was petrified of doing that at first, but I did get there. But the feeling of turning on a camera and trying to do something like for this potentially large, vague audience that's behind the camera, like, is completely different. And there's no conversation. It's just you. And so I did not know how to do that.
Well, okay. So how long did it take before you started getting a little more comfortable, and what was the next step of the channel after that?
I think so. Like I said, I kind of went through different phases where at first I did some stuff and it really didn't get a whole lot of traction. So I just figured it was kind of the same as like the other, me playing guitar or piano videos. So I really didn't take it super seriously. But after a year or so, like, it got that big spike. I got pretty excited about it. I started putting more out there. I think for a while, like I put a lot of energy into videos, and the channel just really didn't grow very much. And so I kind of like petered out and left it alone. And then after another year or so, it started to pick up again, and I got back into it. So I definitely went through several distinct phases of like, oh, I'm going to put a lot of effort into YouTube, and then, oh, it's not really working so well, and I kind of got away from it.
So your next really big one looks like the Circle of Fifths, how to actually use it.
Yeah.
And that one has 5.2 million views.
Right. So that was
5 years ago.
Yeah. So that was I would call, like, that point on was the third era for me, like the when I started to really take YouTube seriously. And we'll eventually here get into like why I stopped. But that video is probably my least favorite video that I ever uploaded. I just didn't feel like I did a great job there. I mean, the information I think was fine. I don't think I got anything wrong, but I could have presented it a lot better. But because the title was good, or YouTube decided to bless it or whatever, that is my all-time most successful video by almost an order of magnitude.
Pretty cool looking. You got the...
I guess. that video was I've been away from YouTube for a long time, and I want to get back into it, and I'm gonna not worry too much about it. I'm just gonna get something done and get it out there, and not get into the details, not worry so much on whether it's perfect or not. And of course, that's the one that's like the biggest one for me. So.
Okay. So you got pretty serious about it then. What does that mean? You just... Well... Did you like come up with a plan to do it every month or so. Like,
Well, I had all kinds of plans. I don't think they ever turned into anything super concrete. I pretty soon after I'd uploaded that one, it started to do well, like really well. I think it basically like doubled the viewership of the channel, and I'm like, whoa, it actually is growing now. I think it was the first time where I felt like me putting effort into it actually like had a result, which was a pretty big deal. So I started uploading more. They were, mixed success, but it felt like pretty much everything I uploaded got viewership. It got like some kind of return for me, I guess. And so that's when I was like, okay, this is a real thing that I could do. And YouTube had evolved a lot. Like they had, from what I can remember, they were doing better in terms of like monetizing. Like you could actually make more than a couple cents, over time. Like the idea of being a YouTube person, like somebody who took that as their career, was like, I wasn't there, but like that was something that I was thinking about. It's like, man, I could actually make money. I could be one of the people who are just a full-time YouTuber. Like I was definitely thinking about that quite a bit. So I started thinking like, all right, I got to do lots more. I started a Patreon, which was successful. Like that was growing. I was getting videos out semi-regularly and like really starting to take it much more seriously, thinking that it could be like
golden age.
Yes, that was, I guess that was my prime. That's when I really started to take it seriously.
Yeah, because it looks like 2 videos after the Circle of Fifths, you have a video called "What This Channel Is All About," which I'm sure that means you were doing a lot of thinking about it. And then a couple videos later, you have the Patreon announcement with the dice and everything.
That's when I really started making plans and thinking like Patreon was pretty much brand new at the time. That was like a whole new thing.
No, I remember you explaining to me what Patreon was and showing me all the little dice and stuff.
Yeah. I was really excited.
Okay. What happened next?
So what happened next? I mean, the short version is that I stopped uploading videos to the channel. And I closed down my Patreon.
Wait, so the Patreon stuff was 5 years ago. And
it was
then
going for a little
you
while.
released. Yeah, okay. And then 3 years ago, you give a plan, or you tell everyone what your plan is. And that was in 2017. That was 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago is your last video. So it looked like, because I watched the 2017 plans video, and it looked like you had a lot of plans and you were excited to do a lot of stuff. And then a year after that, you go radio silent.
Yes. Yes, that is what happened. So there was no one thing, like there wasn't some traumatic event in my life, like I got shot and I changed my views on living or something. Like it's hard to, it's going to take a little while to talk through, I think, because
Take your time.
I did not understand it at the time, and I still don't totally understand it, but I understand it more than I did. And I think that it is something that happens to a lot of people, actually, a lot of YouTubers. So what you kind of just described of me, like uploading stuff and things going well, and then like starting to talk about all these big plans and everything, and then disappearing. I have seen that exact thing play out in other YouTube creators that I'm personally interested in. They're actually, so before I started uploading, or maybe right around this time, there was a guy who did music theory lessons on YouTube. His name was Liper, Andrew something, I forget his last name, but he was big. He was like the YouTube music theory guy before me. And same thing, his channel was huge, especially for, that era of YouTube. I mean, he had like 200,000 or 300,000 subscribers in like 2009, which was massive. He had tons of content, all these different like courses and lessons and everything. Um, and like by all accounts, it was going super well. And then he stopped uploading, and it was like this several year gap, and everybody's like, dude, where'd you go? What's going on? Or whatever. And then he comes back and he does this video where he's like, I'm back, we're doing it again. And he's talking about all these plans he has and how he's gonna like reboot everything. He was even talking about like he wants to open a school and like all this stuff that he wanted to do, and it was exciting. And then he disappeared. And it felt very similar to my experience. And I've seen actually a bunch of YouTubers like that. There was a StarCraft guy, Husky, if anybody remembers that, who he would cast StarCraft 2 games, which is like you watch the game and kind of narrate what's happening, which sounds kind of funny if you don't watch video games like I do. But at the time, it was huge. I mean, he had this massive channel. Same thing. Everything's going great. Tons of viewership. He disappears, comes back later with this like, I'm back, we're doing it again, like comeback video, and then gone. I could probably name off like 5 or 6 different people that I personally follow that did the same thing.
No, I started researching YouTubers that have just gone silent, and the list is long.
Yeah. And it happened to me, and I can't really speak for anyone else. I can only really tell you like what's going on in my head, or what was going on in my head. But I imagine it's similar. And it, like I said, it took me a while to really come to grips with like what was really happening. So I knew that there was a problem many months before I actually like, went silent basically. Every time I would go to make a video, it started becoming progressively harder and harder. And it sounds like burnout or something. That's kind of what you would assume. Like if somebody would stop, like, oh, I'm probably tired of it, it's probably not interesting anymore. But I wasn't. It was like the opposite of burnout. Like I was super excited about everything. I had all these plans. I cared a lot about every video that I uploaded, but they became more and more difficult, like going onwards. And difficult in the, how would you put this? Like picture going in for a job interview for a job that you really want. And like you have this feeling of how I perform for this, 1 hour block of time or something is going to determine the course of my life. And you can imagine there would be like a ton of emotional weight there, just a lot of pressure, and you're going to analyze everything you do, and you're going to be really worried about it. That's kind of what every video felt like, except instead of that becoming easier and easier with time, like you would think, it kept becoming harder. And I distinctly remember being in a coffee shop working on an outline for a video, which I never really like scripted stuff, but I would like work through a bunch of ideas and like have it all laid out and kind of like the plan. Anyway, I remember working on that and like rewriting it for the 12th time or something. And I just had this feeling like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Or not I can't do it anymore, but like I can't get this video to come out. Like I am so obsessed with it. I'm so like, there's so much of an emotional burden with this that I just cannot physically get through recording it and releasing it and editing all that stuff and like trying to put it out there. It felt like being on a bench press and like pressing the bar and then like having it start coming backwards. And like at that point, it doesn't really matter how you feel or how many people are yelling at you to like, you got this. It's just like you just can't do it. It's over with. And that is kind of the feeling that I had.
What's going through your head? Is it like, I can't live up to the expectations of everyone? Because if I read through your comments, I mean, everyone is praising you through the roof on how amazing you are. And then there's on some of the more viral videos, there, there's plenty of negative comments like you'd expect on any
Right.
YouTube video. So
Right.
is it like the positive ones that like build you up so much you feel like you can't live up to that, or is it the negative ones? I'm sure it's both, but
So it was a lot of things. Um a lot of things that all kind of added together to be this like weight that I couldn't get lifted, I guess. And I do want to say this first. Um as the gap between like now and my previous video like got wider and wider of me going longer without uploading stuff, a lot of people were like, hey man, what's going on, how is stuff, like
yeah,
people were worried. um and I felt for a little while I would like respond and say, oh yeah, I'm still working on stuff, like should be in a few days or should be in a week. And um eventually like it got pretty clear that stuff wasn't really coming. um and I can feel how frustrated a lot of people must have been with me. Like, why don't you at least just say, hey, I'm here and I'm all right?
right,
Or explain what happened. But I didn't. I mean, at first I would kind of say stuff, but I stopped because I never actually decided like, oh, I'm done. I mean, I got to that moment of like, oh my god, I just can't get this to happen. But I never felt like it was like I just wouldn't do it anymore. It was always still like, even now, it's like I got to get back to YouTube. I got to get this done. I got to figure out how to get over this hurdle. So I at every moment had planned on releasing something. Like in my head it was coming, it was just a week away, and like I got to this point where I didn't want to talk to people and like try to promise like, yeah, I'm working on it, it'll be out soon, because I had already done that so many times. I wanted to just get over whatever was going on in my head and like get it out and say, all right, cool, I had a I don't know, mental hiccup or something, and I'm back. So I felt awful, still feel awful about people wondering where I went, and like, why wouldn't you just get on there and like talk to people, talk to your, followers and stuff. And there was so much guilt, like I never could, but I never left in my head, I guess you could say. um
yeah.
anyway, okay, so your question was like, was it comments, and was it the negativity or the positivity or whatever?
Well, is was it something that y- was it something that was said over and over from people, or that just finally got to you? That I realized it was a lot of things, but
It was, but that was part of it.
yeah,
So I've heard a lot of YouTubers talk about like negative comments and how that can really get to you. Um, and that wasn't the problem for me. Like, it definitely was, like you said, the bigger videos, you get kind of the masses coming through and consuming it, and some people will say horrifying things to you, um, which does kind of mess with your head. Every now and then I'd like look down at my phone and I'd get the little notification that somebody left a comment on YouTube, and I'd read it. And most of the time it was really nice, or sometimes it was, like, oh, this was helpful, thank you. And I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. Sometimes it was like, hey, I hate you, you should kill yourself. You're like, oh, somebody chose to say that to me today, so cool. And that just kind of
yeah,
sticks in your head. But that didn't happen to me that often. And I mean, music theory is not like super controversial or anything, so there wasn't much of that. Um, but it wasn't really why. Like, that wasn't really why. I'll just put it at that. Like, it would bother me, but not on like a big grand scheme type of scale.
yeah,
The positive comments, which most people were really positive. Usually, if you're going to leave a comment, mostly you're nice about it. Really liked reading them. Like, it actually did make me feel good about what I was doing. So it was like a positive reinforcement to me, but it actually did, yes, like add to the weight. I mean, it made me feel like there were people who really wanted me to keep doing what I was doing. And in some way, like, that added pressure to this idea of like, I got to get this thing out. There's people who want it. I've promised that I would. Um, and it made it feel more and more important, I guess.
one thing you had also mentioned, or we were talking about this a while ago, but you said like you would get you know, like long emails or something from people, you know, telling you
Yeah.
how much you meant to them and everything. But like you would get so many that you can't respond to all of them. And if you did respond, you can't say much because that stuff takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm
And so then you feel really guilty about that. Like someone saying something really nice, it
mhm.
ends up making you feel guilty.
Yes, yeah, I would. I mean, it still happens. Like, I'll get an email that's like 3 pages long, or you know, the equivalent of like 3 pages or something, and it's like somebody pouring their heart out, saying like, "Oh man, you helped me so much, and I was going through all these dark times, and this and that, and like I've been trying to understand this for years and years, and like I finally do." And I mean, it's awesome to read that, and it does make me feel really good, but at the same time it's like, how do I respond to that? I mean,
Yeah.
i can't I can't write, you know, my own 3 pages of deeply emotional stuff in response. Like, I don't have that. Or even if I did, I mean, I
Right.
can't do that, you know, 4 times a day or something. Like, it's just that would take everything out of me. But then responding with like, "Cool, man, thanks." Like, that feels super like, I don't know, just dismissive and crappy. So I just like didn't really know what to do. So instead
Yeah.
of feeling good, which is what the person wanted, it's like I do feel good, but I also feel this guilt
Yeah.
of I'm not I'm not doing what I need to do, or I'm not responding to this person like I want to. There was actually a guy on Patreon who, I forget his name. I wish I could remember. It's been a long time. But we were going back and forth, and I think I was like, we were kind of talking about something, or I was helping with something. I can't remember. But I sent him something, and he didn't respond for a long time. And then he finally did, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's been like way too long. I think I'm just experiencing the guilt snowball of, you know, every day that goes by, it's like it adds a little bit to this feeling in my head that I need to respond, and so it's like this bigger and bigger hurdle." And I'm like, "Oh my god, yes, that's it.
The
That's
guilt
what,
snowball.
yes, the guilt snowball. It's like this thing where the more time that goes by, the more guilty you feel, the more obligation you have, and it's like it just keeps getting bigger. And so it's hard to deal with on Tuesday, but on Friday it's even bigger, and it's even harder to deal with. And like the more
I
time that goes
text
by,
everyone.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a big part of it, is this feeling that people, like, I had promised things to them and they were waiting on it, and I wasn't delivering it, and it was like this guilt snowball kept building up. So that was a big part of
You
what added to the like emotional burden of getting something done.
so you've been snowballing for 2 years.
Yeah, it's pretty big now. It's really big.
So was there a time where making these videos was like really fun? You know, challenging and fun to overcome and
Yeah, I mean, yes. And okay, I would say it this way. It wasn't like things just switched of like, "Oh, this is super fun and I love it," to, "Oh, this is like crushing and I can't handle it."
right, I'm sure it was slow and
Well, it was more like there's these different components of the experience for me, where sometimes, like especially early on, where it didn't feel like anyone was really watching, it more just felt like work. It's like, "Oh, I got to do this," and it felt like turning in a report or something. Like it didn't feel that important to me because it didn't feel like anyone was watching, and it didn't feel like there was any real consequence. It very much was like, if a tree falls in the woods, or you upload a YouTube video in the woods and nobody watches it, like, does it matter? That was the feeling. So it felt more like work. But as it got more attention, it was fun and exciting, especially when it started to feel like me putting work into it like had a benefit, or it actually did cause things to grow. Then it's like, "Oh man, if I do work, good things happen." So it was fun and exciting, but there was also those feelings of guilt and those feelings of like I said, it's sort of like going in for a job interview. Like, these anxieties and things would start to build up alongside that. And for a while, it was really fun. There definitely was some anxiety and some stuff going on there, but it wasn't that big.
yeah.
But as things progressed, especially in that like third era of me really getting excited and thinking thinking it could like be the course of my life. I mean, that's the level that I was thinking of it at. That's when those other feelings started to grow and get bigger and bigger. And eventually, again, without me really realizing what was happening at the time, it kind of overtook everything else, where it was just like something I couldn't get over.
So, how do you look at it right now? I mean, we're addressing it right now, but like,
Yes.
do you still feel like you're gonna come back to it someday, or do you think it's over, or do you really just have no idea?
Well, I have gotten to where I am beginning to understand what has happened better. And that to me was kind of the first step. I have had plans to come back. I've, had several very serious attempts at like trying to get things rebooted and get new content recorded and like get it ready to go. I mean, in the sense that like I spent many, many, many hours working on those things, trying to get it like fired back up again. But I think it, even if I had gotten that stuff out the door and like uploaded and said, hey, I'm back, I think it would have wound up being exactly like what all those other YouTube channels I was describing. Like it would be this big comeback video, or maybe 2 videos or something, and then it would go right back to where it was, where I just could not sustainably do it. Like it still would have been just as hard.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I want to, part of the answer is that we are doing this now, which is, going on YouTube. So yeah, it's something, right? And we'll see where we get with this, but in terms of like me getting back in front of a camera by myself and like creating educational content of me, explaining things, I'm not sure. I need to get to where I'm like emotionally able to do that, where it doesn't take that much out of me like it did before.
Yeah. Have you thought about any other ways to approach it? Like currently on your channel, it's like, these big videos, and sometimes you do like series, and I mean, these are like big things, and you have to think about them and plan them out and and record them. And that seems really scary to me. But like, have you considered like any other way to approach it? A way that's a little less pressure, a little faster, a little more fun for you?
Well, yeah. So another part of the emotional weight, right, that we didn't really talk about yet was, so I have a personality flaw of being a bit of a perfectionist, or definitely being a perfectionist, to where which some people almost look at like it can be a good thing, and I will tell you comfortably that it is not. Perfectionism is sort of an obsession where you have some idea of goodness or perfection in something that you're working on, and sometimes it doesn't even make that much sense. It's like I would get really fixated on the lighting quality of just, oh man, I watched the video playback and like the lighting's bad and I want it to be better, and I'm trying to fix that, and it's like I can't let go of this idea of like, I look at some professionally shot studio video and I'm like, oh, I want it to look as good as that, which is dumb, because people don't watch it because they want really good lighting. They watch it because they want somebody to explain something to them. But that kind of thing would become obsessions in my head, where it's like it was extremely difficult for me to let go, or I would obsess over and over about how I was saying what I wanted to say. There's this like, I realized this later, but part of what I wanted was to say exactly what needed to be said in the best way possible, in a way where you can sit down and you can listen and you just understand and it's perfectly articulated. But then I also wanted to be able to explain things and say things in this completely casual, comfortable, off the cuff kind of way, as if somebody just sat down and was talking to you. And those two things are like at odds with each other. Like you cannot be perfectly off the cuff and improvisational and comfortable, but then also perfectly articulated with like the perfect amount of information density and pacing and everything. Like you just can't do those two things at once. And I just got obsessed with that, of like, it didn't matter what I did, whether it did come out comfortably and easy to listen to, or whether it did come out like really carefully articulated. It was like I wanted, no matter which one it was, I wanted more of the other, and I could never resolve that in my head. And so I got very obsessed with these things, especially as it felt like the videos were becoming more and more important, to where it became so difficult for me to actually create something and like feel good about it at all and even let it out there. Like that kind of added to the emotions there of just, I couldn't become happy with it anymore. So what was your question?
Well, that was a great answer. Whatever the question was.
How, like, is there a way? Yeah. Okay. So that was part of the problem, is like this idea of me striving to do something that isn't even a real thing. Like I have never witnessed a video or somebody teaching to where it's completely unscripted and totally casual, but then also like, again, perfectly articulated and all that stuff. I mean, the closest, well, I don't know. I don't think there is such a thing. I've seen some really good explanations by certain people, but they seem to be rare, and they're not usually something that you can repeat over and over. So I fully embracing one of those two paths might be smarter, like either doing something very conversational where it's not very rehearsed and being totally okay with it taking a long time, and maybe you are a little bit circular and maybe you don't explain everything perfectly, but you take your time with it, it's casual, it's comfortable, and there's that. Or full on scripting, like a lot of people do, where it doesn't feel like somebody's just talking to you, it feels like they're, reciting a script, but it's also like extremely tight and well done. So that could have helped at least with that issue. I also think doing like talking to a person like we are right now is just worlds easier than talking to the void, into a camera. That is tough. It is just, I think some people are really good at it, and I don't really know how they got to be good at it, because it's just really hard. I don't think I ever felt comfortable with it.
Because I don't know. I feel like I could see you just doing like a question answer, like live stream, answering music questions, and like that being very low pressure. And it's just kind of,
So at the time, I mean, live streaming is fairly recent. I mean, it's been a thing for a while, but not that mainstream.
Yeah.
So at the time, it didn't feel like as much of an option, but now it kind of does, and that seems like maybe a better thing, because if it's live, it's live. Like you can obsess all you want, it doesn't matter. It's happening. And I have like played around with live streaming some games and stuff on Twitch, and that to me feels much more comfortable. I mean, I'm streaming to no one, but that's fine. It still feels easier. Yeah. So I think that could have been a much better fit, or maybe would be. It could be. Yeah. I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would love to see you come back in some way, but
me more than anyone. I mean, like I said, the guilt snowball is very, very large at this point. So that, like, no matter what the strategy would be, like that's still something to contend with. But
so do you think there's anything that YouTube could have done differently to help this? Because this is not just you. This happens to a lot of people. So like, is there something in the system that could lower the chances of this happening?
I don't know if it's a YouTube problem. I mean, maybe. I haven't really thought about it from that angle. I do think that, like, clearly it was not just me. Like, this is a thing that happens to a lot of YouTube creators, and I mean any creators, I'm sure, right? Like I'm certain that it's like a common human trait that this kind of thing happens. I wish that I had understood that this was like a real possibility,
Yeah.
Like you never really weigh options that way. Um, for example, there was this guy that I really liked who was in like the 3D printing world, and he did like materials testing. So he would like print out a 3D printed part, and he would like test, you know, its breaking strength or whatever. And same thing, like his channel was growing and it was doing really well, and he was a really quality, you know, content creator. And he was kind of hitting the limits of what he could do, like with just bench testing and stuff. So he built this machine that had like a hydraulic lift and a force meter type thing, where he like this giant welded up rig that he would use to like break things, and it was super well done. And so he has like all these videos of him building this thing and like how it's progressing, and eventually he gets it done. And he's like, this is so amazing, like we can do so much more testing, get so much better data, and blah blah blah. And that's when he disappeared. And again, I can't say like what happened to somebody else. I can only speak to myself, but I think it was the same thing. I imagine it was. And you never think to yourself like, oh, the channel's growing, I'm gonna put a bunch more effort in, but I should be careful because I might get to the point where things become so important that I can't deal with them anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's just not a trade-off you think about in your head. Like you just think that like growing is growing, and that's good, and that's what I want, and whatever I need to do to grow, you know, that is the ultimate goal. And I mean, at least for me, I never was aware that like there was this thing building up in my head where it was becoming like inside my brain, there was this thing that was making it more and more difficult to actually do videos. I mean, I knew it was becoming harder, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And I actually like misdiagnosed it several times. Like I knew there was a problem. I knew it was getting harder, but for a while I was like, well, maybe it's because it's so much work to get set up to record a video. You know, like it takes me hours to get all the lights in place and the cameras and, you know, fire up all the stuff that I need to fire up. So maybe I need to like have a studio set up where it's super easy, where I can just, you know, flip a switch and all the cameras are mounted and the lights come on and I can just start recording in 5 minutes. So I spent, I don't even know how many hours like building this gigantic LED panel, like soldering all these light strips together, like color matching the lights according to white balance and whatever, like mounting it all under the desk to where I could just flip a switch and the whole thing came on. I designed and 3D printed like mounts that went on the walls that held lights and with a switch that I could flip. So like I actually, after putting in way too much work and way too much money, built this studio that I could like flip a switch on and it would all just come on. And like it actually did, you know, remove hours of setup for every video. And I did a great job solving something that was not the problem. And again, if anything, it made it worse. I was putting more and more weight on each video and like putting more importance on the channel without realizing that like my problem was an emotional problem, not a practical problem. I think this mistake gets made a lot. I thought that I just needed more time. Like it was a time problem. And so I was like, well, if I can just get to where I can take a day off of 1 day a week off of work, you know, I don't work Fridays. That's an entire day I can spend, you know, 8, 12 hours, whatever I want to, every Friday working on YouTube. Like, of course, that's going to make things so much better. And I eventually got there where like I, you know, talked to my employers and I got the day off and all that stuff. And I was like, sweet, this is going to be amazing. Same thing. It made it worse, not better, because the problem was me putting so much on what I was doing, and that just made it even worse. So.
Oh, I wonder if this is because to me it seems familiar. Not on that level, but there are things that you get very excited about it, and then they become a bit successful, and then the stakes get higher and higher, and it gets to a point where you can't do it anymore, or you get to the point where you make these huge plans. You're like, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Which I actually did a few months ago, and I have totally destroyed all the plans, and now I don't even want to touch anything to do with them. But it's just me, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not being watched by 300,000 people, and it's not all public, and so it's just kind of, and it's not that big of a deal. But you know,
it still
doing
happens
it because I got too ambitious and I couldn't keep up with it. So I
Yeah.
wonder if it's kind of the same thing, but on a big stage, and
I think
it's
it
just
is.
so much more intense.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I've felt it on like a much smaller scale in other areas of my life where like once something becomes important and you start attaching a lot of weight to it, you know, where the outcome of this or how well I do with this is, it really matters, it's going to affect things. Very stupidly, you don't do them. Like that seems like the opposite of what it should be. And the things that
right.
are dumb and don't matter, you should not spend your time on. But it, to me, feels like exactly the opposite, where I have so much of an easier time sinking my days into things that don't matter or don't like working on the studio, like the lights
Yeah,
for the setup like that. I spent tons of time on that, but it was because it was like, it felt, I don't want to say it didn't feel important, but it was just this comfortable thing that things weren't hinging on. But like recording things and actually getting the real content out, that felt important and scary, and you know, the guilt involved and all that stuff, like that is something that I've mentally avoided, or like unconsciously. And I think that happens
right.
across the board, you know, for all different aspects of life. And I wish that I understood that. I mean, that was kind of your question, like what could be better. I think for anyone else out there who is working on that same kind of project or dealing with that same kind of thing, I guess just realizing that that can happen and understanding that you need to pay a lot of attention to the way you're approaching things, the way you're thinking about things. And if you are doing things that make it feel more and more important, where you're hanging more of your identity or your, you know, career, whatever on it, that should be maybe a red flag. Like that's not necessarily a good way to go.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I
So
mean,
do you think just being able to identify it would have been enough to get you out of that and keep going? Like if you had kind of considered this to be a real problem, you think you could have avoided it?
um that's a very good question. Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it took me a long time to even understand the problem at all, never mind find a solution for it. And as of now, I still have not actually uploaded anything to my YouTube channel, so clearly I didn't solve it.
Yeah.
um, but I don't know. I don't know. I think it could have helped. I think understanding that like things were going in a direction that was going to inevitably lead to, it wasn't burnout because that's not what happened, but
Right.
whatever the name for that phenomenon is, that's where things were going for a while. Um, and I think understanding that could have certainly helped. At least maybe it would have been enough to avoid that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
So
wish I wish I had better answers, but
I feel like the answer, not the answer, but a solution would be, it's not that it's this big huge thing that you need to overcome in order to enter the stage again. It's like really simple. It's
yeah.
like this should be fun for you. This should be enjoyable. And if it's not, then never return to it. But if there is a way to go back to this thing that you started out caring a lot about,
Hmm.
if there's a way to go back to that, and enjoy it and get rid of some of the pressure, then I think you should go for it. That what that actually is, I don't know, but I think
Right.
the answer for this kind of thing is actually just really simple. I don't know what it is exactly, but
Yeah. No, I agree very much. I like I said, I think one of my biggest mistakes was not realizing what the real problem was, and so I did things that actually made it worse. Um, you know, I didn't really recognize that like I had a mental, emotional problem in my head, and instead I was like, I got to work on my studio. I got to take time off of work. You know, all those
right,
things wound up making it worse. And a lot of it was me thinking like I gotta willpower through, I just gotta grit my teeth and make it happen, and I'm sure it'll get easier eventually. And I did get through some content that way, but it did not get me to a place where it became easier. It kept becoming harder,
yeah.
to where I just couldn't do it. So yes, like recognizing that it needed to be fun, it needed to be easier. I needed to, I mean, this is easier said than done, but like let go of a lot of those perfectionist obsessions that would get into my head. I mean, that's still an issue that I deal with.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of those things were what was going wrong. And I should have figured out how to make it fun and simple. Maybe doing it live is the answer. Like I said, that wasn't super a thing at the time, but you know, it kind of has been as time's gone on. So
I just mean now or going forward.
yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, like you said, we're doing this, and this is a step for me at least. So, start with that.
I'm actually surprised at some of what you've said, because we've talked about it a little bit before, but I definitely wanted to save it for this.
Yeah.
Because I think obviously a lot of people want to hear about it. But I think I had kind of figured that a lot of the problem was like just, negative comments and getting into your head about that. But
I've
it
heard
sounds
a
like
lot
that's
of
not the main thing.
No, I don't think it was, and I've heard a lot of people say that, and I don't want to discount what other people are saying because the experience can be very different, and I that is a real thing. Like
Absolutely.
the negativity can affect you in ways that, I mean, it can it can be frustrating even at the time. You might make a video, put it out there, you get 99 people saying, "Oh, thanks, this is great, looking forward to the next one," like tons and tons of genuine positive stuff, and then you get one person who just says something mean, and sometimes it's not even that bad. It's just like, "Yawn, this sucked." And you're like, that's the only one you can think of out of 100 comments, the one stupid negative one where somebody probably watched for 4 seconds and just said something and didn't even care or think you'd ever see it. And like, that's what's in your head. And it's stupid. Like, you even know that it's stupid. You're like, man, there's all these people that are being so positive. Why can't I just focus on that? But just, there's some flaw in your brain that won't let it go. And like I said, my stuff was pretty benign. I mean, I'm mostly just teaching like scales and chords and stuff, but some people are handling like more political topics or things that are more controversial, and you get all kinds of stuff. So the burden can definitely be big, but for me at least, I kind of like, for a while, it's like, maybe it's stuff that's bothering me. Like, that's why I don't want to upload it, but it wasn't the reason. I would say it didn't even really contribute that much. Like, the problem was kind of the opposite. It wasn't negativity. It was like me attaching so much weight and importance to everything I was doing.
So what advice would you give to someone who's kind of dealing with the same things?
I would say, first, reflect honestly about like where you're at. Recognize what you're feeling when you actually do go to put things out. I mean, I think it's always going to be a little bit hard. Like, there always is that uncertainty and a little bit of nervousness, and like that's fine, but it needs to stay at a manageable level. And if it's growing like it was for me, and I think a lot of other people, first off, like, recognize that, and don't do things like I did, and I think other people have done, that make it worse. Like, relax about it sounds like stupid advice, because, of course, if you could relax, you just would. But doing stuff like I did, like taking more time off, putting more effort into the studio, like that, for me at the time, was the wrong choice. I needed to be more casual about it. Maybe I should have been putting out content that was easier and more off the cuff, and maybe just random Q&A where I didn't even worry about having, pre-recorded content. Like, trying to make the experience feel more casual, more fun, less important. I mean, that sounds weird, but like, that's really part of it, is make it feel not so important, where you can just get out there and like do stuff and talk to people. I think that's the direction you want to go. If that's what's happening to you.
So Do you have anything else that you wanted to say about it? I think you've done
Um,
a very good job.
thanks. You did a nice job getting it out of me. Um,
Was there
yeah.
anything else on your list?
Um, I think the two big things I wanted to get through were the guilt snowball, the uh, the black hole of perfectionism.
The barbell metaphor?
Yeah, the bench press metaphor. Um, the the idea that sometimes you have this ill-defined idea of what you want in your head, like with I want it to be conversational, but I want it to be perfect and super tight and well scripted. Like those two things don't make sense. But if I had said it out loud and put it in those terms, I would have been like, yes, this doesn't make sense. But I never really did that. It was always just a feeling of like, I said this, but I wish I had said it this way, or like, I said this, but I sounded stiff and it sounded scripted, and I never really thought about what that meant. But if I had, I would have recognized that this is stupid, it doesn't make any sense, and you can't strive for something that isn't even possible. Like there were all these pressures going on in my brain that I did not recognize. I didn't even realize were there. And I think just, everybody's personality is different. Some people are not perfectionists, and this is not a problem for them. And maybe they need to spend more time being critical and analyzing. But for me, and people who share similar personality traits know that that's going on. There's a quote by Ira Flato that's kind of famous. He's talking about being a content creator, in his case for a radio show, and how one of the frustrating things about somebody who's trying to create something is that you probably have good taste in their case radio, right? Like what's really good and what isn't, and sometimes you can even say why. But when you go to create something, it's bad. Like at the start, you aren't very good yet, and you have to put in hours to get good. And so you're constantly in pain by comparing what is good to what you've done. And that's just this painful thing for anybody creating content. You're just gonna do that. You're gonna be criticizing your own creation up against what it ought to be or what should be good. I would even go further than that and say that isn't actually the whole story, because even as you do get better, the way you think about your own stuff isn't the same way you think about somebody else's things. Like you can look at a painting and it might be really good and you recognize that it's really good, but you wouldn't obsess over it the same way that you would one of your own. Like if you're painting something yourself, there's a million little decisions that have to be made, or even big decisions that have to be made. You're constantly thinking about different, I assume, I can't paint, but tell me if I'm wrong. You're
right.
You're weighing all these different options and agonizing over, which direction you want to take, and the finished product, you're thinking about what could have been or whether you made the right choice. And and if nothing else, you've just spent many, many, many hours staring and thinking about this piece of art where you see someone else's, and that all isn't there. You see the finished product, you have no idea what decisions were made and what wasn't, and you don't see the ugly how the sausage is made part of that piece of art. You just see the final product, and you probably don't stare at it for 20 hours or whatever it is. So I think really you can't ever be happy with your own work. That sounds bad, but I think
at some level you can be happy about.
Yes, you can, but you have to be able to accept the flaws of, I did this thing and this is the best that I can do right now or this week. And maybe if I poured more time into it, it might get a little better, but maybe it wouldn't. And you just have to be okay with putting something out there that does not fit your idea of perfect. I had such a hard time with that. And that was a big part of the problem for me. And I think if you're like me, you have to learn to let go of that.
I think that's great. I feel like you've summed this up very well. So, unless you have anything else to say about it.
I have a feeling we might revisit YouTube once or twice in the future, but I think that's what I wanted to say. I think we'll leave it there. Well, maybe the
Well,
final thought is that I'm really sorry to everybody who I disappeared on. Um, you know, I felt very, very bad about that, and I had a lot of personal struggle with my YouTube channel and all that. Like I never meant to leave. I still haven't left in my head. So I am sorry.
I'm gonna say that they forgive you.
Maybe they don't, but
Okay, well maybe some of them don't. Well,
that's fair.
all right. Well, besides YouTube, what have you been up to in the last 2 years? Besides feeling bad about YouTube.
Okay, well that took up a good chunk of time. Um, so I've gotten more seriously into powerlifting. We talked about that a little bit in a previous show. I'm an amateur powerlifter. It's just something fun, but I've really been enjoying that. I think because it might be a more direct result of YouTube than I realized, because one of the really great things about powerlifting, where you lift, a barbell with a lot of weight, is that it takes 100% of your focus, and you can't think about other stuff while you do it. Like that's what you're doing, and your mind can't wander. And I like that. Like there's something kind of meditation like about that. So I've really grown to enjoy powerlifting for the mental part of it, I guess. I find it very freeing in a sense. So that's something I've been up to.
And you're still StarCrafting, right?
Actually, yes.
Or has that gone down a little?
I've taken a bit of a break in the past month, but that's always something that I kind of go back to, and honestly, kind of for similar reasons. I think StarCraft is a game that's extremely fast, and you have to like keep up with a million things at once. It's pretty much the game, which it sounds like a panic attack turned into a game of just like feeling like you can't do everything at once. But same thing, like when you play the game, it's so demanding of your attention that your mind can't really go anywhere else. Like you sit here and you play this game for 10 or 20 minutes or whatever it is, and it requires every ounce of your focus. And I like that because I can't think about anything else. So yeah, I would say same thing.
Well, got anything else to say?
I don't think so. I think we can leave it there.
I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah. Thanks for talking me through this. All right. Yep.
All right.
See you next week.